I think there's a case that Cole Palmer might just be the best player in the Premier League, but maybe even all of Europe. All right, everyone, welcome back to the American Blues podcast. Let's talk about Cole Palmer. You just can't avoid this topic right now. Everyone's talking about it, but I've been thinking after the game, setting the 4-goal record, just kind of reflecting on what he's done for Chelsea in the past season and a little bit, and it's unbelievable. Like, we are genuinely watching a world-class talent develop right before our eyes. And I thought after Ronaldo and Messi, they've kind of fallen to the wayside. They're getting older. I didn't know how long it would take for another one of these like extreme talents to show up, because you have players like Haaland, you've had players like Kevin De Bruyne, Salah, Kylian Mbappe. They're all amazing. Are they Ronaldo, Messi? No. Am I saying Cole Palmer is at the Messi, Ronaldo level? Absolutely not. He would need to do it over an entire career to even come close to those two. And I don't think anybody's going to break any records that those two have set. But I do think it's interesting just to put into perspective how good Cole Palmer is. Now, I think context is everything, right? Like, you have players like Kylian Mbappe, who's torn up the French league. Sure, he's extremely talented, but the one big criticism is that it's the French league. So, of course, his stats are going to be a little bit padded. And then you have players like Harry Kane and Bayern Munich. Look, the whole German league is just set up for Bayern to win, essentially, even though they haven't won, every single year the past decade, but they've come pretty close. And that team is basically set up to just generate goals and assists for Harry Kane. But of course, Harry Kane is an incredible player. But as you can see from the Euros, there's a big drop off between his Bayern form and his Euros form. And then, of course, you have Haaland, who's just, I don't even think he's really human. He's like a cyborg that's created to make goals. Rarely have we seen a goal scorer like Haaland with that much power, pace, precision, efficiency. He did have a little bit of a drop off last season, but even his drop off season was record, almost record setting. And this season, he looks like he's right back on it. But the problem in Haaland is that he isn't a complete player that Cole Palmer is. Haaland is a pure number 9 striker. He's not as good in build up, but he is there to be a box presence. He is there to terrify the defense. And he's there to do what a striker needs to do, which is score goals. So if you get him the ball, he will score goals. But he's not going to be the one who comes back to create the chances. He's not going to be the one on the wing beating players. He's not going to be the one finding space in the middle of the field and then looking up to make a progressive pass forward. That's just not Haaland. That will never be Haaland. That's not his strength. His strength is in scoring goals. Now, I think Cole Palmer is a very unique combination of all of those players. Everyone keeps debating whether his best position is number 10. Should we have Nkunku there because Nkunku's so good? Should we have Palmer on the right side like last season where he was extremely effective? Should you have him drop a little bit deeper? I think, as you can see from the beginning of this season, his best position is just anywhere on the right side of the field that has space. I think he needs complete freedom to do whatever he wants because his actual game intelligence is so much better than anybody else on the pitch. He knows exactly what to do in every phase of the game, whether it's in build-up, where to be, whether it's in attack, counter-attack, finishing. Every aspect of it, he knows what to do. And he makes it look so easy, so effortless. The game is all about just finding space. And some players, like Modric, just doesn't seem to be able to find space. Even when there's a giant hole for him to run into, he rarely does it. And people have always said, why don't people pass to Modric? Why don't people pass to Modric? If you watch the difference between his positioning and Cole Palmer's, you'll understand. Palmer is always looking. He's always looking to see where he can be the most effective, whether it's dropping back, moving a little bit high up, going on the wing, helping on counterattack. Like, his movement, his runs, they're so clever. And most importantly, Cole Palmer has a way better first touch than just about anybody else on the team. And that makes it so even if he's getting pressed, even if he's playing back to goal, he can easily control the ball, either turn or lay it off and give it to someone else. And he just sucks in midfielders and defenders around him, but he knows how to find space through them. And that is extremely, extremely potent player to have on the team, because then it allows everyone else more freedom, more room. It allows everyone else to make runs that maybe they wouldn't instinctively do before, because they trust that Palmer already knows they're going to be making that run, and they trust Palmer to give them that pass. But let's talk about some statistics. So you'll see it up on the screen. I'm going to read it off. So let's look at, of course, Erling Haaland, right? In 2022-23, he had 36 goals and 8 assists. Absolutely ridiculous. And then last season, 27 goals, 5 assists. Very, very insane numbers. But then let's look at Cole Palmer. Last year, just in the Premier League, 22 goals, 11 assists. Just this year, after 6 games, 6 goals and 4 assists. If you look at the most goal involvements since September of 2023, Cole Palmer is number 2 with 28 goals, 15 assists for a combined 43. The only person better than him is Harry Kane. And we already talked about Kane and how, that Bayern team is basically set up for him to succeed. That whole league is set up for him to succeed. But that doesn't necessarily reflect Kane's true skill. And you have to remember, Bayern traditionally are the most wealthy, the most set up to win team in the Bundesliga, whereas Chelsea has not been that. We were bottom half the table just 2 seasons ago. Last season, we clawed our way to 6th. We are not a top 4 winning titles every single year, challenging for Champions League kind of team where everyone in their position is some of the world's best. Cole Palmer last season basically put us on his back and then just carried us and dragged us up that table. Like, if we didn't have him, we would probably be in the relegation battle last season. That's how impactful he is. And I think that deserves a lot more credit than someone who's already joining a highly successful team. And you could even say that about Haaland. City are just a well-oiled machine. And Haaland is just absolutely reaping the benefits of basically everyone on that team feeding him. Whereas last season, Palmer, again, he was on that right wing. There were many times in games where he was looking to create himself, beating players, moving in, hitting shots, taking penalties, taking pressure penalties, all of it. That was just all on Palmer. And I think what's better to see this season is that I don't think the entire team is as reliant on him, which is fantastic. He can drop back into build-up where, he's not the one scoring. He can hit those crazy one-time crosses out to Jackson. He can release Madueke. He can release Sancho. There's so much that he could do with Jackson, Madueke, and Sancho this season that he just could not do last season, just because the personnel, either they weren't as gelled together or they just needed a little bit more time to progress. And I think they needed a better manager to better utilize all of them in a better system. But let's talk about Cole Palmer in terms of Chelsea's history. I would say I have not seen a player like him since Eden Hazard. And Hazard was unbelievable in the Premier League. He had a huge drop off after he left Chelsea to go to Real Madrid, and we certainly got the best years out of him. But there were several seasons where Hazard was just basically unplayable. If he decided that he wanted to carry the ball, he was carrying the ball. If he decided he wanted to beat 2, 3, 4 players, he was going to do it. And if he decided he was going to make a difference and score game-tying goal, game-winning goal, he was going to do it. But the one thing with Hazard is I think we all wish that with his level of talent, he probably could have achieved way more if he just was more hungry. He just seemed like a player who he loved the game. He played because it made him happy. He didn't really want to train because that didn't make him happy. His happiness came from playing on the weekends, right? And during game time. And that's pretty well documented even during that time, and especially afterwards with all the stories coming out from Hazard himself, from his former teammates, especially like Mikel, just talking about how lazy he was during practice and how it drove everyone nuts. But then you couldn't say anything because during game day, he would be easily the best player on the pitch. But if you look at Hazard's best seasons for Chelsea, it was, 2016-17, he had 16 goals and 5 assists across 36 games. And then his final season, 37 games, he had 16 goals and 15 assists. And I think that was the season where he was involved in 50% of Chelsea's goal involvements for the season, which was absolutely nuts. Even those numbers are dwarfed by Palmer. And And that Chelsea team was a team that was way better set up in terms of winning titles, actually competing, whereas our team right now is just still a bunch of youngsters trying to find their way. So I think that puts a little bit more into context just how impactful Cole Palmer has been and continues to be. And what I find really interesting is that if you look at the heat map between last season and this season, you can clearly tell last season he was basically just on the right side, right wing. Sometimes he would cut in a little bit. Sometimes he would go back more into defense to help create. But this season, just in terms of 6 games, you can tell his main position is no longer on the wing. He has Madueke on that side. The only time that he really started there was against City, and he was not as effective. I think Maresca has easily realized that, hey, he's our most important player. He's our most important player in basically every part of the game. And so we need him to be where he's the most impactful, which is around the right-sided 6, 8, 10 area. Basically that little corridor between the middle of the field to the box on that right side. He has free roam to do anything that he wants over there. And he can even move central. If you look at, especially I think the last game against Brighton, it was a perfect example. First half, Cole Palmer was kind of one of the front players on most counterattacks. He was sometimes neck and neck with Jackson. He was breaking people who were finding him on counterattacks. And he's very effective there because his runs are that good and his finishing is that good. But then second half, he said, no, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to go back down more towards midfield to play as a 6, kind of draw out defenders, and then be more of a playmaker where he hit several incredible long passes to Jackson, to Madueke. And really, if Jackson just had better finishing, Palmer easily could have had 2-3 more assists. Right? So he can do everything on that right side. And I cannot think of another player right now in the league that's as impactful as him in terms of an entire team's standpoint. Right now, he no longer needs to carry us on his back all alone because I think he has really good supporting players in Jackson and Madueke, Neto, and Cuckoo, Sancho. Like, there's just so much in our attack that's built in his favor where he can get the ball to them, they can get the ball to him. And, a perfect example was that his 4th goal, which was Sancho. They all pressed really hard. Sancho got the ball and then found Palmer making a great run into the box. And then it was a great finish into the near post. Like, those are runs that he would not have made last season because he just wouldn't have been in that position in the center of the pitch. He would have been on the right side. I cannot believe we have found this gem from City. And this certainly makes up for just so much pain watching how good De Bruyne and Salah have been. Just 2 players that we let go of. It's pretty well documented now, the reasons behind it. Although in hindsight, 2020, those were 2 league-defining, generation-defining players that we let go of. And it's been one of the biggest regrets for me watching the team and the most painful thing to watch our players do so well on other teams just because we didn't nurture their talent. And I'm glad that we were able to do the same with Cole Palmer. Now we can kind of rectify the mistakes of that. Now City can understand that position where their first team is so good they've had to let go of some of their really talented youngsters, and it just so happens that they let go of, I think, someone who's going to be one of the best players the Premier League has ever seen. Going forward, are there any worries? I would say number 1, it's on Palmer to just keep going. Just keep adding to his numbers, keep being impactful, and to do it consistently over an entire career. And then he'll join the legendary players in the Premier League, like Lampard, like Salah, De Bruyne, like Aguero, Thierry Henry, Wayne Rooney, all these iconic players that define their generations. Palmer could easily be one of them. And another thing is, of course, as a club, we have to keep him. That means we have to be in a position to give him the absolute top of the game, meaning challenging for titles, Premier League, Champions League, everything, challenging season in, season out, so he's not turned away by teams like City again, or especially by a team like Real Madrid, which, to be fair, if Real Madrid is interested in a player, they tend to get that player. But I don't know. I get the feeling that Palmer has a lot of loyalty for us just because we were the ones that gave him that opportunity. He clearly has a really good connection with Chelsea fans. We're allowing him to play the way he wants. He's clearly happy on the pitch. He has complete freedom to do what he wants. And he has the absolute support of the club. And from last season to this season, I think his wages have already doubled. And clearly our plan is to continue rewarding players that play well. So as long as he keeps going, he's going to get more wage increases. His contract is going to get longer and longer, and that offers a lot of stability. And that also offers a lot of security from the club side in terms of being able to negotiate better if other clubs want to come in for him. You know, it's a big difference if a player like Cole Palmer is on the last year to 2 years of his contract versus he still has, 7-8 years to go. I don't know. I feel very positive going forward. I think it's absolutely crazy for any Chelsea fan to be negative about the team right now, especially when we have someone like Cole Palmer. It is just a genuine joy to watch week in, week out. It's a shame that he's not in the Conference League, although I get it. I completely agree with that decision just because we do need to protect him. The last thing he needs is a bad injury to derail, this momentum. But hopefully he can stay healthy. He can keep these numbers up, and I cannot wait to see him every single week. And we finally have a player that I think anybody who enjoys the sport, anybody who really appreciates good football, they cannot get enough of watching him. And that's just, what a great feeling. What a great feeling. It's been years since we've had that feeling, and now that we have it, we have to enjoy it because players like this just don't come along all that often, as we know all too well. So can't wait for the next game. See you guys next time. Peace.